Yo everyone, what's going on today on Amps, Pedals and Pickups? We're going to be checking out the brand new EVH Iconic 15 watt EL34 amp head. Now, as the name suggests, this is a 15 watt lunchbox-ish sized amp head, but it's running a full-sized single EL34 tube in the power section. More on that later. Now, another cool feature on this one is you can completely disable the power amp section and just plug it straight into your audio interface without needing extra equipment like a Loadbox or even a speaker cab. Just plug it in and record. Other than that, there's two channels with overdrive and burn options. There's a power amp boost for an extra push when that's engaged. There's reverb on here. There's full power or quarter power settings to keep things a little bit quieter. There's also an effects loop, preamp out, a ground lift, as well as speaker impedance options. We'll check out everything the amp has to offer, but first let's hear it in a mix. This is the EVH Iconic 15 watt EL34. If you like how that's sounding, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And before we get into everything, let's take a look at this info from the legendary amp designer, James Brown. He's worked with Ed before, and he's also the lead designer for this EVH Iconic amp series. Now this is out, there's a few things that might not be talked about on the site. For example, some ask about the noise gate that's missing. It's actually in there, but I borrowed a trick from my amp tweaker pedal brand where I set up the noise gate to automatically adjust with the gain control and increase with the burn switch. So it's in there, and it didn't cost as much as adding another control. Also, this amp uses a mixture of self-bias and fixed bias Class A design in the power amp, so it's a little fatter sounding than the bigger amps, but doesn't run quite as hot as a regular single-ended tube amp like a Champ or something. The reason for this choice of one EL34 other than two EL84s is that EL84s cost almost as much as EL34 nowadays, so it's almost as expensive as making a 40 to 60 watt amp if you use two EL84s. Also, when Ed toured with the 5150 back in 1991 on the FUCK tour, there was a time when he had a power tube go out and he really liked the tone that he got that night. They told me about it and I said go for it. So they actually ran that for a few months with one CXL6 on one side and two on the other, and the result is that the amp has more second order harmonics, which are octaves, and always harmonically correct. This amp sounds more like that tone. And one last detail, the boost on the Footswitch not only adds the boost knob that is a volume boost, which is slightly tighter for solos, but it also adds about 8 dB on the input circuit with that boost knob down, so you get more gain in both channels when you hit that. Alright, for this setup here, I'm using the Balaguer BB Woodman, and it's set up in drop C/D standard. And it's going into the TC electronic Sentry back there, which is a noise gate, which is going into the JHS Bonsai. And then it's going into the amp, and the amp is going into the Red 7 amp central, and finally going into the RME interface. And for the cab sounds, I'm using a Mirror Profiles Cali IR, which is an SM57, straight onto a Mesa 4x12 oversized, and all the links are going to be in the video description. All right, so first thing to cover, I've got the foot switch plugged in here. When you have the foot switch plugged in, the channel selector on the amp doesn't do anything because it just respects what the foot switch is telling it. And second to that, if you don't have the foot switch plugged in, this boost option here, there's no way to actually engage that. So you can set it to whatever you want. You can turn it to there, but there's no way to actually engage that boost unless you're using the boost thing here. There's no actual button on the front face of the amp. So you sort of have to make a choice there. If you want to use the boost at all, then you need to have the foot switch. And if you have the foot switch plugged in, then you can't manually do things here. Just some little quirks. I'll show the reverb off a little bit better later on, but to get that going. Just dialed in the amp a little bit. I've done the push-pull to get the single coil kind of thing here, middle position going on there, get these sorts of sounds. all I'm going to show for the clean section for my uses. Definitely ticks the clean box. All right, so just flick the overdrive on. The gain setting there is like pretty clean. Just got a tiny bit of grit going on. We'll crank it all the way because we're here. Both channels don't really seem to be doing anything past 5 or 6. Sort of like just relaxes around that 5 mark. All right, so I've got things back onto the second channel now. You can see the gains like 1 or 2 and also have the burn disengaged. Let's check out how this sounds. Just like the first channel, anything past 5 or 6, the gain's pretty much just folding in on itself. Counterintuitive, not really helping. But yeah, that 4-5. Still sounding and feeling really chuggy and nice around there. Could definitely use a push, but with the amp only, that's pretty much the spot. And with the exact same settings and the tube screamer now engaged. To me, that is where we start to get tone home bass. All right, tube screamer off, turn the gain down a little bit. We're going to turn the burn option on, but we'll just A/B things. So for this setup here, with this guitar in drop C, with these pickups, you know, this stuff's going to be different with different tunings, pickups, all that kind of thing. But for this setup here, the tube screamer into this burn section on the second channel is going to be like the heaviest, tightest, most modern kind of thing. So if that's the kind of thing you're looking for, then you're going to be able to get that out of this amp. So there we go, there's a look at the EVH Iconic 15 watt EL34 amp. And overall there's tons and tons of gain on tap. And if you're looking to play AC/DC crunch stuff or slower, fatter, thicker metal riffs, or you're sort of shredding leads, I think you'd be perfectly at home here with just the amp only. You'd probably be able to get away without using a noise gate as well, since the amp has some of that stuff going on under the hood automatically. But for faster rhythm stuff like skate punk or thrash metal or any sort of like modern metal, you're going to want to use a tube screamer or something to help knock out that low end and tighten things up. And you're also probably going to want a noise gate. Now, price-wise, I just had a look here. This is retailing for 1,180 AUD here in Australia. It's also about $6.99 on Sweetwater, and the full-sized 80-watt EL34 Iconic is at $9.99 on Sweetwater, so it's about 30% more than this one here. The two main things I sort of wish this amp would have, the first one is a controllable noise gate. I know it's got the noise gate circuit in there that's automatically helping, but I think it would have been way handier to let us control that sort of stuff with a dedicated knob. And the other thing is for recording, they have that emulated line out, which is handy, but I really wish they had an option to disable their cab sim and let us use different IRs inside of the door. So yeah, all in all, $6.99 USD for a small amp with a full-sized EL34 power tube that's, pretty much gig ready straight out of the box. I think it's pretty reasonably priced in 2025. And if you're on a budget and you like EVH and the Iconic series and you want a more affordable EL34 option, then I definitely think this one is one to check out. The 80-watt Big Boy is 30% more expensive, but it also has a dedicated EQ section for each channel. And it's obviously physically bigger and has more output. I wouldn't really say these things are drawbacks. It's just things to weigh up on like purchasing dollars versus features you're looking for, that kind of thing. Either way, this little amp has heart. It's got heaps and heaps and heaps of gain on tap. That channel 2 with that burn option, straight to chugging. And as always, if you stuck around to the end of the video, you're a legend. I'll catch you on the next one.